Behind that unmoving face, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, he roots around the van again. It was the third time that week. The boy, 16, maybe 17, a groundskeeper's assistant who went by Pell, would come through the Aldenmere service gate at first light carrying his tool roll, sign the morning sheet at the contractor's booth, and then take the long way across the yard to the potting shed rather than past the white work van parked along the south wall. Every other worker walked straight past it. Pell went wide, hugged the iron fence line, kept his eyes on the ground. I logged it on the second occasion. By the third, I had a picture forming in my mind that I did not much like. The Aldenmere service gate is not the ceremonial post. No tourists, no cameras, no dignitaries stepping from motorcades. It is the working entrance to the inner grounds of Keldrath Palace, the one the florists use, the groundskeepers, the maintenance contracts, the catering lorries on state days. The sentries posted there hold the same standard, full dress, rifle at the carry, eyes forward, silent. But the nature of the post is different. You watch different things. You learn the rhythms of the people who work the grounds the way a sailor learns wind, not by looking directly at it, but by what it does to everything around it. I had been on the Aldenmere gate for 14 months when the contractor arrived. His name was Darren Colt. He ran a licensed grounds firm that held a rolling annual contract for maintenance of the outer gardens and the service road perimeter, hedging, drainage, pathway repairs. He had credentials, a laminated pass, a work van, 2 regular laborers, and the habit of speaking loudly on his telephone while crossing the yard as though volume alone constituted authority. I did not dislike him on sight. I catalogued him the way I catalogued everything that passed through my gate: who he was, what he carried, how he moved, what was regular and what was not. Pell had come on staff 2 months before Colt's current contract cycle began. He was not Colt's employee. He worked directly under the head groundskeeper, old Tarrant, who had been at Keldrath for 30 years and treated the palace gardens the way a father treats a farm. Pell was quiet, hard-working, precise with his hands. He learned fast. Tarrant spoke well of him to the duty roster supervisor. I heard the conversation at the gate one morning and filed it in the back of my mind without thinking I would ever need it. I needed it 3 weeks later. The routing around the van I have already described, but there were other things. The way Pell signed the morning sheet when Colt was standing nearby, a quick, compressed motion, no eye contact, gone before the pen had stopped moving. The way he angled his body going through doorways when Colt was in a corridor, as though he was trying to occupy less space. These are the things you see when your job is to see everything and show nothing. You are not supposed to have feelings about what you observe. You are supposed to record, assess, and act through the proper channel. That is the discipline. That is what the uniform means. But there is a distance between seeing and understanding, and what I was building across those 3 weeks was understanding. I still had nothing concrete, no confrontation witnessed, no complaint filed, no welfare flag raised through the head groundskeeper's office. What I had were patterns. Patterns are not evidence. They are a question. The answer came on a Tuesday afternoon in the 3rd week of autumn, at approximately 17 minutes past 3. I know the time because I log it. The yard was quieter than usual. Tarrant had taken the senior groundskeeping crew to the East Garden for a drainage survey, and most of the maintenance contractors had finished their afternoon shift and gone. The duty officer, Lieutenant Wren Calver, was inside running the 4 o'clock post-rotation paperwork. The forecourt was mine. Colt came out of the equipment storage room with a clipboard. Pell came around the corner of the potting shed carrying 2 bags of lawn grit, heading for the south border beds. The gap between them closed before Pell had seen it coming. I watched Colt step directly into Pell's path, not aggressive, careful, deliberate. The way a man moves when he wants no witnesses to read it as a threat. He spoke at a volume I could not hear from my post. Pell's hands tightened on the bags. His head went down. Colt held up the clipboard and pointed to something on it, a document, a form, something with lines on it. Pell shook his head once, very slightly. Colt pointed again. Longer this time, more still. I have been in situations in my service where a man pointed at something on paper and expected compliance, and the paper was not worth the clipboard it was clipped to. I know what that looks like from 30 meters. I know it because I have been the man pointing, and I have been the man whose head went down. I want to be precise about what happened next, because precision matters. Colt had not breached the gate perimeter. He had not physically touched Pell. He had not raised his voice at a level that constituted a disturbance. By the letter of my post standing orders, what was happening in that corner of the service yard was a conversation between a licensed contractor and a palace grounds employee, and it was none of the Aldenmere Sentry's business. I have heard men in the regiment argue that the ceremonial post is an exercise in restraint for its own sake, that the holding still, the silence, the forward gaze, these things are the point, full stop. That a guardsman who breaks protocol without a verified, documentable threat is a guardsman who has decided his judgment outweighs his orders, and that road leads nowhere good. There is truth in that argument. I have held it myself on a cold morning at the processional arch, when something moved at the edge of my line of sight, and my hands did not. But there is another argument, less spoken, that lives somewhere below the level of words in every man who has worn this uniform for more than a year. That discipline without discernment is just a different kind of abdication. That the post exists to protect something. That the something it protects is not abstract. Pell's knuckles were white on those bags. His head had not come back up. I thought about those two arguments for approximately 4 seconds. Then I stepped off my post. I crossed the service yard at a measured pace. I did not hurry. The rifle stayed at the carry. My face stayed forward. Colt heard me coming at about 10 meters. The gravel announces everything, and turned. He looked at me the way men like him always look at a ceremonial guardsman, with the brief instinctive recalculation that says, this changes something, though he was not yet sure what. I stopped at arm's reach. I looked at Colt. He opened his mouth. I reached into the left breast pocket of my tunic and removed one of the duty office cards we are issued at the start of each posting period. It carries the direct line to the duty officer on watch, the welfare liaison contact, and the palace credentials office. I held it out. Colt looked at it. He looked at me. He looked at the card again. I said nothing. He took the card. He read it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said in a lower voice than he had used on his telephone calls, "There's no issue here." I held his gaze. I was still on the clock. I was still in dress uniform on a palace posting. I was, in every visible respect, simply standing in a service yard holding very still. If there was a message being communicated in my stillness, I was not the one who had put it there. Colt looked at Pell. He looked at the clipboard in his hand, then tucked it under his arm. "Tomorrow," he said, and not to me. He walked to his van. The engine turned over. The van went out through the service gate. I looked at Pell. He was still holding the bags of lawn grit. His knuckles had gone white on the handles, and then, slowly, they did not. He looked at me once, a look I cannot describe precisely but which I have not forgotten, and then he went back to his work. I went back to my post. I was back at the gate in under 90 seconds. Post integrity was maintained. I logged the departure time of Colt's vehicle as I always did. At the end of my watch, I sat in the duty room and wrote a welfare observation report. It was 3 paragraphs. In the first paragraph I described, without commentary, the pattern of behavioral indicators I had logged over the preceding 3 weeks. The route deviation, the posture, the signing behavior, the body language under proximity. In the second paragraph, I described the incident in the service yard in precise chronological terms. Time, duration, participants, observable behaviors, the duty office card produced and accepted. In the third paragraph, I noted that the welfare liaison had not yet been engaged, that no formal complaint had been filed by the employee in question, and that I was raising the observation through the duty channel on the grounds that the patterns were sufficient to warrant a welfare check by the appropriate officer. I wrote it the same way I write every report, plainly in sequence without decoration. Whatever I had felt standing in that yard with my shoulders squared and the gravel still settling behind Colt's retreating footsteps, that stays behind the face. The report is not the place for it. The report is the mechanism. You use the mechanism correctly, you step back, and you trust the institution to move. That trust is not naive. I have seen the institution fail. I have seen reports go unread, welfare flags go unfollowed, paperwork stall in a tray for 3 weeks because no one thought it was their job to pick it up. I have no illusions about what a single 3-paragraph report can and cannot do. What I know is this: a report filed is a door left open. A report not filed is a door locked from the outside. My job was to file it. I put no conclusions in the report. Conclusions are not my function. My function is observation and accurate reporting. I signed it, time-stamped it, and placed it in the duty officer's tray before I went off watch. Lieutenant Calver read it that evening. I know this because she initialed the receipt column. What she did next was her decision, not mine. The welfare liaison visited the inner grounds office the following morning. I know this because I was back on the Aldenmere gate when the liaison's pass was signed in at 9:20. The head groundskeeper, Taryn, countersigned the visitor form himself, which told me he already knew something, or was ready to know it. By the afternoon of that same day, Colt's site access credentials had been suspended pending a credentials office review. I know this because his van did not come through the Aldenmere gate on that day, or on any subsequent day during my remaining 4 weeks on that posting. I did not know the specifics of what the welfare liaison found, or what Taryn said in that meeting, or what Colt's review eventually produced. None of that is my business. My business was the post and the report. The machinery of the institution moved on its own from there, the way it is designed to do when the right piece of paper is placed in the right tray at the right time. There is a thing people misunderstand about the ceremonial post. They see the stillness and they call it passivity. They see the forward gaze and they call it indifference. They see the silence and they hear nothing. What I was doing on every watch of those 3 weeks was the opposite of indifference. I was paying the kind of attention that most people are too distracted, or too incurious, or too invested in not seeing trouble to pay. I was cataloging a frightened boy the way I catalog everything, patiently, precisely, without assumption, without rushing to a conclusion I could not yet support. The uniform demands that. The post demands that. The 14 months on the Aldenmere gate gave me the baseline, without which no deviation means anything. And then, when I had enough, when I had watched the distance between a pattern and an incident collapse to nothing in a service yard on a Tuesday afternoon, I made the quietest possible move at exactly the right moment. 1 card, 1 silence, 90 seconds off my post. There are men who would have grabbed Colt by the collar. I understand that impulse. I am not built for it. There are men who would have looked away because looking away is easier and the post standing orders gave them permission. I understand that impulse too. I am not built for that either. A week after the credentials suspension, Pell passed my gate on his morning run. He had his tool roll over one shoulder and his gloves tucked in his belt the way he always did. He looked across the yard as he passed, and he gave a single small nod, barely visible, the kind of gesture you only catch if you are watching for it. I did not return it. I was on post. My eyes were forward, my face was still. But I logged it. I log everything.